Hello, everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa, as well as Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. We're actually streaming on both of our channels today, which I think is a really cool thing to do, especially in light of what we're speaking about today. And I just want to welcome with me today beautiful Myrna Luther. Now, Myrna, you've been I don't know when you actually started watching our show, but I think it's been a while. I know we've been friends on Facebook for a while as well. And it's just such a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you with me. Hello, beam me up, Scotty. Really good to have you with us. And I would certainly call you one of our overcomers for sure on this channel. And it's really good to have you. And I know you've got an amazing story to tell us. So, but before we get there, how are you, beautiful lady? And welcome. I want to just say welcome. I know you've publicly shared your story on one occasion before. So I want to just welcome you to this beautiful healing channel. And
Thank you.
How are you doing? I know it's early in the morning there where you are, right?
Yeah, it's okay. The sun is starting to come up right now. Yeah, it's about what, 7. So yeah, weather's beautiful.
Well, it's lovely to have you. It's absolutely lovely to have you.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you've got a very interesting, beautiful story to tell us, which we've really titled Abuse, Addictions, and Angels. And I honestly think there are so many amazing people in this world who have experienced so many traumas, especially as a child. And I'm just so grateful that you can come out and share your story with us, because I know stories like these are always there to help people. And these stories are always there to assist, and not only for you that's speaking, because it's always such a healing thing to speak and share and use your voice, right? But also for those who've possibly experienced similar type stuff. And I want to just say hello to Beam Me Up Scotty. Yep, you from Aussie Oz. Claire from Virginia, thank you. And Bobby Schick from Wisconsin. So welcome, guys. And I know there's obviously some other people in the chat as well. So over to you, beautiful Myrna. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. And this is an interesting journey that I'm on. So I don't know what God has in store, but for some reason, he told me to share my testimony with you that I did a few weeks ago. And then you asked me if I wanted to be on your show. And I was like, I didn't even remember sending you the video. And my girlfriend asked me, why did you send it to her? And I said, I don't remember doing it, and it was God that sent it to you. I mean, so, right. I'm supposed to share to help other people. And so, anyway, should we get started or what?
Yeah, well, I think it's always interesting when these sorts of things happen, because I remember when you shared with me your interview that you did. I think it was more of a private group of people, right?
Yeah.
You spoke to more of a private group of people. And I think when you start sharing, hello, Jessica. You're so cute. Thank you. Star. And again, of course, Scotty. And I really think it's just such an amazing, and when stuff like that happens, because I remember receiving that link that you sent me, and I was like, wow, what an interesting story. So yeah, well, I would love for you just to share with us what you can. And I know your story is quite interesting because it involves your brother. Mm-hmm. Mostly it's parents and stuff, and or grandparents or stuff like that. But your story actually involves your brother, which for me is always heartbreaking, because it's telling me that something happened with him as well, because kids don't just do those sorts of things.
That's
anyway, over to you.
Yeah. So my brother was 7.5 years older than me. And when I started, when I got out of preschool and started public school, he was my after school caregiver, and he started molesting me. And he would hold me down on the bed, hold a pillow over my head. I couldn't breathe. He would tell me to just relax and count to 10. And, well, then after, and I've blocked most everything out, but I remember that. And right after that happened, he took me into.
Was he actually abusing you? Sorry, I just want to chime in here. So when he was holding the pillow over your head,
he
telling
was
you to count to 10.
rubbing himself on his privates on mine. So
right.
Afterwards, he took me into the living room and gave me a cigarette. So I'm like 6 years old. Okay, gives me a smoke, lights it, tells me to take a drag. I just take a drag. I blow the smoke out. He's like, no, you need to inhale. You need to inhale. So I finally do it the way he wants me to. And he says, okay, now if you tell mom and dad what I did to you, I'm going to tell them you're smoking. And so I didn't say anything. And the last time that he physically abused me was when I was 14 to 16 years old. I can't remember if I was driving yet. I went to spend the night with him and his girlfriend at a house they were renting. And his girlfriend had gone to bed, and he went down on me. Okay. I was sleeping on the sofa, and he was telling me that he was going to be my first for everything, which for the record, he was not, just so that we make that clear. But then at some point he got up and left the room very quickly. I don't know if his girlfriend came out and saw, because my back was to the hallway, to the bedroom door. Anyway, then after that, he introduced me to cocaine when I was, 15 or 16 years old. So it started out with that. And then it went to meth when I was 17. And I stayed on meth for, 10 years. One thing that's interesting.
May I just ask you, so during this time, he was obviously abusing you throughout your childhood, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm just interested to know, did your parents never cotton on to what was going on? Was there ever any questions there?
Well,
I mean, was there any abuse in your home from your parents? Because when I look at situations like this, and especially he seemed like, I know we spoke off air, and he's about 7 years older than you, just over 7 years older than you. So he would have been, what, 12 or 13, 14 when he started, or when you were like 5 or 6, right?
Yeah.
So from there, it seems to me like he was quite an expert groomer, if you want to call it that, telling you to breathe with your head over the pillow, with your head under the pillow. Then, of course, making you smoke cigarettes so that you didn't tell, and he knew exactly how to manipulate you. The way I look at that, that's kind of like what a grown-up would do to a child when they're busy grooming them, right, and manipulating them. So to me, that would be something.
He learned it somewhere.
Was it not happening in your home?
No. Every summer, my parents would send him to stay the summer with my mom's dad, and mom. So he would go. We were from Arizona, and so he would come to the Texas Panhandle area and stay with my grandparents every summer. I was kind of jealous because I didn't get to go, but I just wonder if maybe mom thought something was going on and didn't want him. I don't know. But at one point, when my brother got drunk in his, he said that grandpa had molested him, and then he corrected himself real quickly and said, no, he was just showing me how to wash myself in the shower. Well, that always stuck in my head, and yeah, and the more I go through it and think about it, something happened to him. The things that he would say, there was something going on, when he would go for the summers, he said that he was having sex with all of our cousins. Now, I think he was trying to make me okay with him messing around with me. I have asked questions on that and confirmed some of that as well. So,
he was molesting your cousins too.
Oh no, they were all the same age because they were older than me. So they were just, not all, he wasn't screwing around with all of them, but there were some of them.
I mean, I know that what oftentimes happens in families is like they'll, it's like a situation of show me yours and I'll show you mine type thing. It's nothing serious. It's really just kids.
And that may be what it was. I don't know, but he implied that I think he was trying to make me okay with what he was doing with me because look, I'm doing it with so-and-so and so-and-so and nothing's wrong. You know what I mean? So, but then, like this other really gross thing that he had told me that when you have sex with a chicken, if you cut their head off, your orgasm is better. Well, we lived in the city. I grew up in the city in Arizona. We didn't have chickens. There were no chickens around. So the only chickens he would have been around is when he's coming to visit grandma and grandpa for the summer. They had cattle, they had horses, they had, and chickens. So, and there was no internet back then. So, I mean, maybe this was just some guy talking crap to him, or what, but I don't know why you would repeat that to your sister, but he did. So that was kind of something I really don't care to have rattling around in my brain. But the thing about my parents, see, my dad has told me that in first grade, I came home from school crying and telling them that I'm not a retard, I'm not retarded. And my dad's like, what is going on? And I said, they put me in special ed class. Well, my dad, if you knew my dad, my real dad, who's still alive and in Arizona, he's a badass, all right? And he goes down to the school, what the hell are you doing with my kid? And they told him that they just needed one more person. They needed a number of kids in the special ed class. And he's like, well, you're not taking my girl. She doesn't need special ed. So he got me put back in the regular classroom. Well, I kind of laughed at that. But my daughter just a couple years ago started saying, Mom, there's a reason they picked you. They didn't just go, oh, we need one more person. Let's just pick any one of them. She said they saw something in you. You were detaching from class. There was something wrong emotionally with you. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, because that's when the abuse started. So they probably saw something in me and just, and so that was the one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
But when my brother could no longer physically abuse me, it was public humiliation. We'd be hanging out with his buddies. And if I was getting too much attention, he would say, you haven't had anything till you've had your sister. And mouths would drop open and everyone would look at me. And I would just laugh because I don't want everyone to know my brother molested me. And then they would sort of go, oh, ha, ha, ha. But I know, because it happened so much, they knew something was up with it, and then when, he was nearly murdered in January of 97, he had decided he was helping a drug dealer do collections and stuff. And he was working a chop shop, which is where you take apart stolen vehicles and you sell the parts and stuff. So this guy got out of prison, and this is the story. This guy gets out of prison and is told that my brother has been screwing around with his wife. So he goes and finds my brother at this chop shop. He goes in, he's got his buddies watching the door, watching for cops, and this guy beats him with a baseball bat. He gets star-flighted. He ends up with fake eye sockets and rods and pins and stuff like that. But he starts getting his life together, and he ends up moving to Texas in March of 97, which my mom and stepdad had moved here. And so he got out of Arizona and got his life in order. And at that time, mine was going down the tubes. But let me back up. My mom was the Bible thumping Baptist preacher's daughter that was living two lives. You know, you act one way at church, but the home life is a different thing. You know, there's alcohol, there's just everything was a lie. And she wanted me to get baptized, you know, and all this stuff. So at 14, I made a false profession of faith just to get her off my back, you know. And I thought this whole Jesus thing was a crock because I'm like, there's no honesty, integrity in this. And what was modeled for me was not anything, you know. And so anyway, I'm sort of off track, but
it's very interesting though.
Yeah.
Very interesting. You're saying about your mum, especially being the Bible thumper, as you call it. I think that often keeps people ignorant and maybe just not wanting to see, because if you're saying that the abuse was coming, was it from her father, right?
Yes.
To your brother kind of let slip. Well, then that would make sense to me that she was probably subjected to that as well. And very often would probably have maybe recognized the signs within you, but often people like that would use the Bible as a means to, and especially when they're super religious, right?
Yeah.
And just kind of like that and not see what's right or left or going on.
We were in church every time the doors were open. But then when we went home, you know, it was like visitation was on Tuesdays. Mom told me, hey, if they come to visit, don't let them pass the living room, because in the family room in the back, there was a pool table and a fully stocked bar. Okay. So it was, Mom modeled this living two lives and no integrity. And I tell you, I would do the opposite of anything she said, even to my death. I had no respect for what she said, you know. So, you know, and she used me as a tool to have revenge on my father. You know, they divorced when I was like 7, and I was the tool. So, which kind of sucked because then I didn't have anybody to go to when life was tough, you know. Even, you know, my daughter, if she makes a wrong decision, she comes to me. But one thing that's done is made me a better mom, because my mom taught me the kind of mom I don't want to be. But anyway, so in 97, my brother comes to Texas and I'm going down the tubes. I'm, you know, cleaning houses. I have great clientele. Everything about me is legal, but I'm doing meth all the time. And a friend of mine said, hey, this guy wants me to take 100 pounds of weed to Idaho. And we're going to make this much money. So brilliant.
That's a lot of weed.
It's a lot.
100 pounds is like just under 50 kilos. I mean, that's the
big giant duffel bag.
That's the size of a small woman.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So we go, you know, I make the intelligent decision to like, yeah, I'd like to make that kind of cash, you know, in a like a overnight road trip. So we go and we make it. We get it dropped off, and on the way back, we're coming back. We're almost to Las Vegas, and I've fallen asleep in the front seat. I wake up, and we're pulled over the side of the road. The cops have us pulled over. My buddy's, you know, smoking a joint. He was speeding. They check my purse. I've got paraphernalia. The next thing you know, I'm in belly chains and I'm in jail. And
having paraphernalia, like what? I would imagine. What
I had
is that?
A glass pipe for smoking meth.
Oh, for meth. So okay, so they arrest you for that. That's interesting. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So they took all the cash that I had made, and so
the cops took the cash.
Yeah. Until I went back and appeared. Yeah, until I went to appear in court, and I got it. Right. They dropped all the charges on me, and that's the end of the story. But so we end up leaving there. We get out in 13 hours. The guy we were running the weed for bails us out, and we head back home. Well, now I have no way to pay rent or anything, and so the guy that I ran for puts me up in this weekly stay motel. and people are bringing me food. And this one night, this Hispanic guy, real dark-skinned Hispanic guy, comes and brings me food. He sets it on the table and he starts chasing me around the table. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to rape me, you know? And all of a sudden he stops and he's looking at me across the table, but he's looking right past the side of my face. And his mouth dropped open. He turned as white as a sheet and he ran out the door. Now, God put an angel right there. I know, because that guy was going to rape me, and God scared the living crap out of him. In the midst of me being strung out on meth and running dope across the country. Okay, really? You know, I mean, God is right there with us through these things. So the guy that we were running for thought I was bad luck because we, you know, get pulled over on the trip. So now I'm cast out of this weekly stay motel and I don't have anywhere to live. And I'm walking the streets at night and I'm asking God to just, will you send somebody to take me out to the desert and kill me, please? You know? Well, I stop at a payphone and I call a girlfriend and I tell her, I'm like, I'm on the streets. I can't go back to the apartment where I was at because the guy wanted me to pay rent by sleeping with him and I wasn't going to do that. So she calls her Connect and the Connect puts me up one night in a Motel 6. And I fall asleep and I wake up in the morning, the TV's on this show that is showcasing this family that lives in Texas. They owned a pawn shop. Their two oldest children were running the pawn shop. These guys come in to rob it and they end up killing their kids. And they end up being sentenced to death. And this husband and the mom and dad, it was the first time anyone was able to go watch the execution of the criminals. Well, they're showing the mom and dad's neighborhood. And I'm like, oh my God, it looks like my mom and stepdad's neighborhood here in Texas. I had been here one time. And I'm overwhelmed, like God just washed over me. Your mom doesn't know if you're alive or dead, Myrna, you know? And so I made a phone call. I told my mom I have to get out of here. And she bought me a plane ticket. And the next day, I think it was the 24th of September, 1997. And I got clean, you know? But then alcohol came into the picture. You know, so the addiction thing was still there with me. At that point in time, my brother and I are both living in my mom's house and we're getting along really great. You know, the good guy was there, the one that I loved, the one that we had some of the funniest times in my life together. You know, but once he introduced alcohol into his life again, that other guy would show up, you know.
Like a Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, the public humiliation would start. If we were out with friends and I was getting too much attention, he wouldn't say what he used to say in Arizona about having, you know, till you've had your sister thing, but he would just go blah, 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 literally like that behind me and stuff. And it was like very weird. But anyway, I cut my relationship off with him in March of 2020. Because
can I just ask you, sorry, just to, you know, it sounds like when we're looking at these types of relationships, it sounds so crazy to think, and I know that there's often questions around this, and this is why I'm asking you, because did you ever say no to him? Did you ever confront him on his behavior, on his abuse? To you at that time, what do you remember about that? I mean, and I know it's very difficult. That's probably a difficult question to answer because we know about the Stockholm syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you become glue to your abuser almost. You see them as your hero as well, and something like this. Do you think that you possibly were experiencing something like that with your brother?
I do. You know, when I confronted him twice, when the year that he was beat, my real dad that lives in the mountains in Arizona had come down to the valley to pick my brother up and take him back to his house. And I went and met them in the parking lot, you know, to give my dad a hug. And, to tell my brother goodbye. And my dad had walked away to the car, and now my brother's on crutches. I mean, he's, fake eye sockets and all that stuff. And so he and I had a time alone together. And I told him, I said, I just want to tell you that I forgive you for everything you've done to me. And I was expecting, you expect the person to go, I'm so sorry, and thank you. And I love you and whatever. But no, he just looked at me like he didn't say a word. He looked, I can't even describe the look on his face.
Do you think he remembered? I'm just thinking, because especially with this Jekyll and Hyde type character that you're talking about here, because often when you hear about these stories, they are well suppressed, not all the time. They are well suppressed, and that, do you think he even acknowledged that was abuse? Right?
I guess if what happened several years later tells me that, yes, he remembered. And that thing was, one of my brother's grandsons was living in an apartment complex. And there was a neighbor guy that was like 19, 20 years old and had invited him in to play video games and started touching him. And he got out of there before it got really bad. And so, of course, my nephew calls my brother and tells him what's going on, what happened. Well, my brother calls me and he's going off. I can't believe this, MFer, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I want to take my gun and drive to Arizona and kill that, And I'm like, don't you think does it make you a little uncomfortable to talk to me about this? I got to go. Click. He hangs up. Like, you're all on your high horse about your grandson getting molested, but what? So
it's in the family.
He knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Anyway, I cut him off in March of 2020 when I ran into him, and he was talking about a time that he and his wife had taken my daughter and his wife's niece into town for a day, to play, have fun. And he says, just out of the blue, he says, I didn't molest either one of them that day. Chantelle, I'm like wanting to run out of the room. I sit there. We were having a beer together. I finished my beer. I'm like, I gotta go. I leave. Now I have to go ask my child if she's ever been molested by her uncle, which I did, and she hasn't. And I know he had never had any intimate time alone with her. There was always family around. But I decided right then, when I asked my kid if they've been touched by a family member, I'm not going to expect you to go to Thanksgiving and us all act like I never had to ask you that damn question, because that's what was expected of me. And I ain't doing that to my daughter.
I'm interested to know your response to him when he said that to you, though. When he said,
I had nothing to say. I've rethought that moment in time, and I'm sure the color ran out of my face, and I was just like, left me speechless, terrified. So a year and a half later, he shot himself. So
how did that happen? How did that happen? I mean, obviously shooting yourself is quite a violent way to end your own life. I mean, what were the circumstances surrounding that?
I don't know. He had been telling his wife that morning that he was so excited he was taking leftovers to work. His birthday was on Saturday and this was Monday. And so he was taking his birthday leftovers to work for lunch, and he was excited about it. He couldn't stop talking about it. Well, she didn't know that the gun was in his lunchbox. So she leaves and takes off for work, and he shoots himself in the front yard. So, I don't know.
Wow. So there was no signs or anything
Now
that
there
he
were
was still
friends
there?
in their town that after the fact he kept saying I'm having suicidal thoughts, and they would try to talk. No, man, come on, you're a great guy. Da, 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 da. But you know,
Wow.
his soul was so tormented, and
Yeah.
you know, that one side of him was a really cool guy, but that other
On the
side,
other side, yeah. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
anyway, I know we're pressed here. Yeah, we're okay. So
No, we're good. We're good. We're good.
yeah.
We're good.
So that was a relief to me, and I, you know, you would think I'd feel guilty about being relieved by that, but I'm not. It just was like whew, that weight that had been on me all those years, you know, was gone. So, and you know, maybe he's not in torment anymore, because I know that I knew of anyone on this planet, I knew more about him than anyone. And I know I didn't know all of the skeletons in his closet. So,
Right.
you know,
Wow.
and that's part of moving from anger and hatred and to compassion and sympathy for him has been a very hard journey. And but I have to say I'm almost there. You know, I'm grateful for everything I've been through that God has saved me from. So
I think it's and I mean, unlike Jessica's comment here, you never got justice either. So it's how do you feel about that? You know, because me as a healer, I'm always interested to find out that because as I said, that's quite a violent way for him to go, very unexpected. I also feel like maybe there was no resolution between you two before he actually left. I mean, there was no apology, there was no um, resolution or justice, right?
you know, I feel that him leaving was justice for me,
Right.
because I no longer had to worry about any of that. It was the largest weight that I have, you know, carried, and it was gone. And, you know, and then of course the devil wants you to feel like, oh my gosh, you should feel bad as he took his life. You know what? That's all I have to say. You know, the devil has tried to keep me down, suppress me, and keep me silent, and it's not happening anymore. You know,
Yeah.
and so I feel for me, the justice was in him taking his life. And that might sound sick and disgusting to some people, but you know.
No, I don't think it sounds sick and disgusting at all. I mean, I think it's just yeah, for me, I guess I always try and put myself in these situations. And if that had happened to me, I mean, I would have wanted to kill him before he left, before he killed himself. It's like, how dare you kill yourself? Let me do it instead. You know, and let me like hurt you a little bit before you go. You know, I mean, I know that is crazy, right? But I mean, and I think it's actually quite amazing that you've been able to process it like that. You know, where and now do you feel like you've resolved whatever you've needed to resolve around the situation for yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know, the whole story, you know, what happened with me with him, what happened with me with my mother, sent me down this path of self-destruction. And for a long time I blamed them. It was their fault. It's always my mother and my brother. At some point I had to take a responsibility as a grown-ass adult. I'm making stupid decisions that I know are wrong and illegal, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to take my own responsibility for it. It's an interesting balance, because these
Yeah.
things were happening to me in my very formative years. So there is something there, you know what I mean? But I still have to take on some of ownership of some of my own stuff. So That's
I
probably
think that
the hardest part.
I think it's such a fine line between finding, what do I take ownership for?
Mm-hmm.
Because really, when your brother starts abusing you in that way, and as I say, he seemed like quite a prolific abuser already, knowing exactly how to keep you quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously the hold he had over you over the years, that to me seems quite tough, to be able to release that. But I think it's an interesting. I mean, just especially when it comes to sibling incest like this, it's very interesting, and I love that you've been able to let it go and not let it get the better of you, because I mean, it's wow.
I feel like you ever meet those people that they've never gone through anything and they just can't relate to anything? And I have been through a lot. Like, I can relate to a lot of shit. And that comes in handy when other people are reaching out and need somebody and a shoulder where you
Oh,
can,
absolutely,
have
absolutely,
compassion and listen to them through it and relate to where they're at, because that's part of what keeps you so silent, you
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
And so whatever this is, all of that is because it was for right now, for this moment right here, because somebody out there needs to hear this, and needs to know that God has been with you this whole time. Like
Absolutely.
when I switched over from beer to vodka a year and a half ago, and I'm putting vodka in here and Propel packets, and I'm keeping this on my nightstand because I'm waking up in the middle of the night going through withdrawals, and I'm chugging it down, and my husband knows what's going on, and he's trying to, and we talk after I got sober, but he doesn't know what to do. And I'm sitting the last month before I got sober, I'm literally not working. I'm sitting here drinking myself to death. Every drink I took was, you're killing yourself. Every time I looked in the mirror, I was puffy, I was swollen, my nose was red. Dude, I'm killing myself. And God sat me on my sofa right back here for the last month. And he showed me all that shit he saved me from. And he says, girl, I didn't save you from that to go out like this. It is not going to happen. And we talked about it over and over. And he kept showing me the angel that showed up. He showed me the drug dealer that gave me a room at the Motel 6. All of these things that God used to help save me and get me here. And so I reached out to my girlfriend because I was worried about having to go to rehab to get off, because the withdrawal from vodka is deadly, and I didn't want my husband to be burdened with that because it wasn't his sin. It was me killing myself. And so I call a girlfriend whose dad is 40 something years sober. He works with getting people clean off of drugs and sober. That's his mission in life now. And I called her and I'm like, here's where I'm at. I got to get off this. And so she got a hold of her dad, who happened to be in Vegas at the time, helping a man get off of heroin. And he gave me this tip: buy a 6-pack of beer and drink 2 beers a day for 3 days, and you will live through those withdrawals. I told my husband what I was going to do. He thought I was batshit crazy, but I'm like, okay, Skyla, the last Monday of March, we dumped all my bottles of vodka down the drain. And Tuesday was my first nothing to drink. And I was convulsing and shaking and I couldn't stand. And I mean, it was horrifying. And my child, who was 19 at the time, is watching me go do this. Bless her heart. I drink a beer and it calms me down, and I drink another one. And, and I did that for those 3 days. And my first completely sober day was March 31st. And I find this funny because I'm glad it was March 31st and not April 1st, because April 1st is April Fool's Day. And so, no, I didn't want that as my anniversary date. But so anyway, I've been sober for over 8 months now. And let me tell you how far gone I was. I dropped 12 pounds in 3 days when I stopped drinking. I was so puffy. Now I'm down 40 pounds. since March. That's how screwed up I was. Bad. And
that is absolutely amazing. And I want
yeah,
to just say to you, congratulations,
thank you.
because what an achievement. And I feel privileged that you've decided to share your story with us. And I mean, I'm just looking again at our chat room, and you know, you have to know there's so much. I don't know if you can tune into the chat room as well. If you go into the top right side, if you look on comments, not private, it'll be either be comments or private, and you know, you can see. Um, but it is such a beautiful thing to break these addictions, you know. And I know alcohol is more, it's a physical, it's definitely more of a physical type addiction, and it's quite an addiction to break. But the fact that you were able to do that and see yourself through it is really quite phenomenal. And congratulations. That is really, really, really amazing achievement. And to your daughter as well, you know, this cannot, and I'm assuming she's the only child, right? Your daughter's a single.
Yes, her dad and I had one child together, but she has, like, my husband has two children, and also her dad has two children that are
All
grown.
right, okay.
Yeah.
But for you, right?
For
So
me, it's my biological child. Yes.
yes. That is such a beautiful thing, you know, for her to have been there for you as well, because it's hard for a child to see their mother go through this. I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, I'm just grateful, and I mean, my father used to enjoy a good party, you know, and and like he just get all lovable and pass out, you know, if there was like if he had too much to drink at a party. I seldom saw my mother ever. I mean, I remember she loved champagne bubbles. So I remember Christmas time and stuff. She loved her champagne and like get all happy. And I think that's one of the reasons I love champagne. But to actually see your parent go through something like this must be very, very heart wrenching for a child, and especially if it's an only child. So kudos to your beautiful daughter. And
It was
here we go,
amazing.
Angela. Angels amongst us, us 214. I needed
I
to hear
see
this message.
that. Thank you so much. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know, my prayer this morning, and before we go, I want to make sure I God directed me to some Bible verses, but my prayer was that if there was just one person in here that needed to hear this message, high five, you know, I mean, because it just starts with one. And,
absolutely.
you know, people have been through so much pain, and the devil keeps us in fear and silence. And I'm done with him. Get behind me, Satan. I don't have
I
time for
so
that.
agree. You know, it's the day we start talking, and I've always maintained that about this show. I mean, I've been a healer for many 20 plus years now, and I've never been taught what I do. It's something I was born with, right? It just comes from inside of me. I've never been trained to do what I do. I've never gone on courses or Reiki this or whatever. Nothing bad about that. I'm just using that as an example because that's the most common one. But for me, there's something I've fundamentally understood in my life is that when people start talking, that's when change begins. I don't know if you watch our shows with Caleb as well. I
Oh
mean,
my, Caleb is mind blowing. And yes,
it's, you know, and I want to just say this as well. I mean, when I started speaking to him in January of this year, he reached out the first time. Well, only once. Never did I think I would see the day that he would be sitting alongside me on a public platform, sharing his story as openly as what he is. I mean, obviously, I always say there's a lot of things, obviously, he can't talk about. But that which he can. And to see a man so vulnerable and really just not hiding his darkness, actually, is phenomenal. And I see that in you, you know, the vulnerability you sharing and all of these things. It empowers us as human beings.
you
It
know,
speaks to our strength. It speaks to our connectedness, which is fundamentally, this is exactly what we need to be doing.
One of the
And
things
it's
you and I discussed, we tend to compare our abuse and stuff to other people's stories. And I
exactly.
think Caleb needs a trophy. Like he gets but that's not a good place for you to be in, because your trauma is just as painful and traumatic
Absolutely.
as other people's. And so we got to stop comparing ourselves and allowing
Exactly.
that to go, well, I didn't have it that bad. So, it wasn't like this or that. So, I'm supposed to just shove it under the rug, swallow it, deal with it, or whatever. And that's not the truth,
Absolutely not.
and
Every
you didn't
person,
get through it to be
yeah,
silent today. God didn't bring you
every
through that.
person has their situation which is relevant to them.
Uh-huh.
And let's never forget as human beings, our number one fear is fear of rejection. And each and every human being that I have dealt with in my journey, and even if they haven't been clients of mine, just to observe humanity, we all have a fear of not being loved. And we all have that pain that has come to us on some way or the other. I mean, I've spoken to people whose traumas have been that their father gave them a hiding in front of their friends, and that's been. But that, I can tell you, has been etched in their mind and
Uh-huh.
has given them such a mistrust of men that they've attracted abusive men, right? So now for somebody else, that might be something so minimal, but when I look at that person, I've dealt with that person, I see the trauma that caused them and how it's affected their life. So we have at the end of the day, we really don't have a place to say my trauma is better than or bigger than yours or fatter than yours, or whatever the case might be. We as human beings all come here and we're all just here to walk each other home. And that is just a beautiful thing that you've shared with us. And that you see, as Larry's saying, I'm so proud of you, Myrna.
Thank
Congrats
you.
on being sober. And just
Thank
like
you
kick
guys
rocks then.
yeah. Thank you for all the beautiful comments. This is just, I don't have words for it. It's a God thing that,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
well, where do we go from here?
I'm just really
I want to
happy
share
that,
one more. Can I share one more thing? And then I want to read these verses because I know we're running out of time.
yes, absolutely. Please do.
So there was a time that I got sober for a few years. My daughter's dad and I were together, and we hadn't had her. And we'd go out and drink beer, and I was always drinking beer. And this one night we'd gone out to a bar, and on the way home, he and I got in a fight, and I hit him, and then he hit me, and there was a big fight going on. And he ends up kicking me out of the car at the top of the hill in our neighborhood. I wasn't in any dangerous place or anything. And I call a girlfriend, and I said, I need you to come pick me up because he just kicked me out of the truck. And so she's like, I'll come pick you up, but you got to call the cops. Well, dippy me. I do that, right? Well, I knew all the sheriffs. They show up. I'm at in the friend's, yard, and my husband is back at our house by this time. So they're at our house talking to him and over here talking to me. And all the sheriffs know me, and they're like, this isn't you. What the hell? He goes, we're going to call our supervisor because they made the law where if one of you gets it, you have a domestic disturbance, somebody's got to go to jail. Well, the supervisor wouldn't let anybody off the hook. So one of us had to go. So I said, well, let it be me, because I'm self-employed. I didn't want my husband to get in trouble with his corporate job, So, and they're like, it's Friday night. You'll see the judge at 10 in the morning. You'll be out tomorrow. No big deal. Oh, no, that's not what happened. I didn't get out till like Monday, and it was a crazy weekend. But God had to have me in there long enough to talk to me, right? So I'm laying on that nice metal cot with the cushion on it and eating crap food and peeing in my stainless
Were you
steel.
allowed? Were you allowed visitors? Were you allowed visitors?
I didn't know I could make phone calls. I'm using the stainless steel toilet that doesn't have a
Go to
toilet.
your friend. Bring me a burger.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. So, but I'm laying in my room and Jesus showed up. You know, he's standing there and telling me, you're letting this go. You got to get sober. Okay. So I quit. I quit drinking with that event. Jail might have that effect on you, I guess. No. What's interesting about that is I started working in the church and working with the children's choir. And my daughter's dad and I had this agreement before we got married that we weren't going to have kids. You know, he had 2 grown kids. I was fine. I was 31 years old. And it's like, you know, I don't need kids. So anyway, I start working with the children's choir and God starts telling me, you need to have a baby. You're supposed to have a baby. And I'm like, no, because I'll end up divorced. That can't happen. And he's like, no. And I said, okay, well, if this is what you want me to do, you won't give me any peace. For 3 months, he would not stop telling me. And so finally, at the beginning of December of 2002, I tell my girlfriends at church, I'm like, okay, tonight's the night. Pray at 7:00. I'm going to tell him. So at 7:00, he's laying on a sofa. I'm laying on the love seat and we're watching TV. And I look over and I'm like, I need to tell you something. And his face was like, and it made me, because I think he thought I was going to say I'm having an affair. But I said, I want to have a baby. And there was like this relief. And then there was this total panic. And he's like, are we just talking one? And I said, yeah. He goes, do I have to tell you tonight? No. So he leaves for work, didn't kiss me goodbye the next morning. I'm in the fetal position all day thinking he's never going to come home. Oh my God. But we had these cool boxers. We had 3 boxer dogs. And he comes home and he sits on I knew he'd come home for the dogs. He sits on the side of the bed. He's like, here, sit up. I need to talk to you about something. He reaches in his pocket, pulls out a pacifier and says, we're going to need one of these. And in 2 weeks, I was pregnant with my amazing little girl. Wow. So, you know, God once again showed up when I'm in jail in the midst of my sin, and Jesus was there talking to me. So he's never not with you. The devil wants us to think that we're filthy rags, and we are not, man. We are not.
Exactly. So, and that's one thing, you know, God never, ever, ever gives up on us, ever. I don't care what anyone says. And, you know, for me, I am very grateful in my personal experience that I did not grow up in a religious household. Honestly, there was no, you're going to be punished and you're going to hell for your this and whatever, you know, that there was no talk like that in our family. But I always knew that I was loved and adored by the one who created me, God, right? And I mean, you might have heard me tell the story before. I was born with gifts that I could see things and hear things. And
you've shown me that too in our conversations that you know. She knows.
And it was like I was then accused of being a child of the devil. So I had this big wrestle, you know, and it felt like me against the world. So it's always been, God has been my greatest ally. And I have never stopped praying my entire life. I'm constantly talking to God. That's the thing. And it doesn't mean I always listened. Right? I mean, God knows I'm God's rebel child, right? So I'm always going to go try my own way.
Birds of a feather flock together, Chantelle.
Totally. And even when I get my ass kicked, right? I mean, like, okay, come. Yeah, you go. Right. So and I have seen people that I've worked with over the years as well, in their darkest times, that is where God shows up. And honestly, this nonsense that we are not loved, that we are condemned, that we are not good enough to enter the gates of heaven or whatever is such nonsense. Honestly, we are all created in the image of God. We are all God's divine children, and we have to claim that. God lives within each and every one of us. God lives within each and every cell of your body. And when God says knock, and the door shall be opened, it's you that has to open that door. It's not God that's got to open the door for you. You have to open that door to believing and knowing, and God will never stop showing up in these kinds of situations for you ever. And I'm sure every person will actually testify to the fact that in their lowest time or in their worst time, there was God. I have spoken to countless drug addicts, right, who've had their greatest moments of enlightenment when they've been high as a kite. High as a kite. That's when God will oftentimes show up. And that's oftentimes the life-changing moment. So it's really up to us to believe that we are worthy.
Yeah, it's not like the churches that I was raised in, you had to be perfect before you could go there and hang out. You know what I'm saying? And it was
let's talk about Jesus. Jesus' favorite pastime was hanging out with sinners. Let's never forget that, right?
Yes.
I mean, like, I love that. I mean, and myself, the best times I've had is talking to drug addicts and users. And I mean, I spent much time when I was living in Johannesburg, speaking to at times the biggest drug makers. These guys were making drugs on a Friday night. They'd come and they would tell me how they would do it and how they would already pay the cops off. 500,000 Rand on a Friday night, boom.
Wow.
Already up front. That was the payment, because they were going to triple that anyway. So it didn't really matter on the drugs they were making. It's insane. It's insane when we understand. For me, it was an eye-opener for me to connect with people like that, but also see them in their most vulnerable moments, right? I mean, one of the guys that I wouldn't say I became friends with him, but he was a friend of mine, right? And she used to bring him around sometime. And I mean, there'd be times he'd go into my guest loo and I'd find syringes the next day. I mean, I didn't even know the guy was shooting up whatever it was. And unfortunately, he overdosed at some point not long after that. But I remember having conversations with him. And I remember asking him, what's your story? Tell me what your story is, And this was in my home, right? I'd love to hear these people's stories. And there were so many times that he shared with me things, and I was able to show him how accepted and loved he was. And the fact that those things happened to him opened that path for him, right? And there is another way. And I know that when he left this planet, he went back to God, because his spirit came and told me that. And in the spiritual way, in a dream, in fact, 3 dreams, 3 nights in a row, he showed me that he was back with God. And he thanked me for helping him see things in a different way. So for me, that's what I say. When I see this and I hear these stories, and I know that we are not ever forsaken. We are not forsaken by God, and we just have to remember that.
I want to say too that if there's whoever, God has these angels, and I call them angels because to me, the guy that gave me the tip of using the 6-pack of beer saved my life. That to me is an angel,
Absolutely.
He has people that are ready to go and do something for him, but you got to say something, And so I just want to encourage, if there's anybody out there struggling with something and you're sitting in shame and silence, reach out to somebody, because God's got something there to help you and pull you out of the hole, and then use you, to help heal others that are going through.
Absolutely. And we talk about alcohol. I mean, we're talking about drugs and stuff here, but let's never forget, alcohol and cigarettes are the gateway drug. And
Mm-hmm.
I will always maintain that. And they
Yep.
are freely available on this planet to whoever, whenever. A child of 6 years old can get cigarettes and alcohol tomorrow if they wanted it right
Yeah.
now. They would find a way. You might say, well, they can't go and buy it themselves. Trust me, there's always going to be someone who will get it for them. There'll always be
Yeah.
someone who will get it for them. So my point is that if you feel like you're in trouble, and I fully agree, Myrna, reach out. Absolutely reach out. But I'd love to chat with you again in the future, and
Okay.
just, let's see where you're at and how things are going and what you have to offer in terms of, your journey that could possibly help others as well. I think that'll
Well,
be
I'm
beautiful.
excited, being sober and God blessing me with the most amazing daughter. I know that now I'm going to be sober for the rest of my physical life, and I can't wait for what he has in store, and if nothing
You got
changes,
grandbabies coming your way.
I
Oh
have
my
5
goodness.
grandchildren and I have 6 grandchildren and a great grandchild, just so you know.
Wow.
But that's my
Wow.
husband's a little bit older than me. So
Wow, that's amazing.
he's only
Well, I
8
always
years
say,
old.
my granddaughter is 10, and I tell you, your grandchildren are life's bonus for being a mother. There's not
Yes.
even a question in my. I always say that. That's what I say. She's my bonus for being a mom. I was a young mother, and it wasn't easy. I'll tell you that much. Being a single mother, and the father was not involved at all, so it was tough. It was tough raising a child on your own, but then comes the grandbaby, and then you go, okay, well, it's absolutely worth it. And every struggle you've ever been through is really, it's worth it, because there's such a payoff, and it's not a monetary payoff. It's a payoff in the heart, and that's
Right.
the best kind of payoff there is. Wow.
Can I read
Yay.
this? I was
Yes.
praying this morning, and I'm the queen of, like, I just open the book to a certain thing, and God shows me what he wants me to read.
Go
So
for it, please. I'd
this
love to.
is Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our sinful nature and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature objects of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in our transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And I know we're all doing good works. Chantelle, your show is life-changing, literally. So I look forward to helping anybody I can as well. And I encourage other people to do the same and, turn this world around. So
Absolutely. One person at a time. And one person changes their life, it kind of gives the next person permission to change their life as well. And I love angels amongst us. I took my 9-year-old son to a hip progressive church yesterday. He was so comfortable. He took up 3 seats and took a nap.
I love it. No, it's adorable.
Laying there just like enjoying life. Church. So cool.
And yes, it saves and keeps us from falling. You guys' comments are beautiful. Thank you so much. Chantelle, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really, really, really appreciate you. And
yes,
to everyone. Yeah, and you guys are a blessing. Honestly, you know what? This platform couldn't be without you guys. I have, and I know, for myself, I've stood up because it's non-denomination. I've always said my platform is non-denomination. but I have I'm a strong believer, make no mistake, I'm a strong believer, just not the way that the square-minded person believes, but that's fine. I have lived in the East, I have lived in Thailand, I have sat with the monks in temples, I've had the most beautiful experiences. I'm an African, grew up in Africa, I've sat with African people and worked with them and the ancestors, and it's everything. I've studied in India. I'm a yoga teacher. I've studied the Upanishads, and I understand the correlation between that and the Christian Bible, which I don't believe many other boxed in Christians understand. And I don't want to make that about that, because I know I take a lot of that flack as well. But to me, every single faith or religion out there is beautiful. I've been in the Middle East, and with a friend of mine as well, and broken bread with Muslims who have such a beautiful heart for Jesus. It's amazing. So for me, it's not about the religion, it's about the humanity, because at the end of the day, one thing I know for sure, we as human beings, we all want the same thing. We all love kindness. We all need love. We all need a roof over our head. We all feel pain. We all want acceptance. We all love our children. I mean, when we look beyond those walls, then we realize we are all just one big, beautiful family. And no one is not worthy of God's love. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done. I don't care where you've come from. When you've accepted that we are that, then we are a family. And that's the way I see things, and I'll continue to see things like that for the rest of my days.
That's what's helped me with, like we talked about, getting over the anger and the negative things against my brother. Is that, It does not do me in my health, mentally or physically. It does me no good to stay pissed, And so having compassion for his soul and the pain that I know, because I knew the good side and I knew the bad side. And I know that good side didn't agree with this other stuff he was doing. And so once I came to that, it's hard to judge when you haven't walked a mile in his shoes. How, you know what I mean?
Right. And the fact that he, in fact, ended up taking his own life in the way that he did, because taking your life with a gunshot is a very violent way to go. So the fact that there was clearly something in him that was so not at peace with who he was and just decided to end it all is saying a lot to me. And you're right, Lisa D. Love is the greatest power, My religion is love. If you want to talk, and I'm not always perfect, make no mistake. I can have a mouth on me, and I can get frustrated, but at the end of the day, I always come back to who I am. And this is really, the family is love and care and to support each other. And I want to just thank everyone. I've got a show coming up in 10 minutes with Bryce. We're talking about, on the show with Bryce. Yeah, we're talking about Vlad the Impaler today. All these missing bodies and things, right?
Oh, I love it.
Bryce she's the best nerd I've ever come across. I adore her. She researches like nobody else I know. Honestly, I'm an inquisitive mind when it comes to that, but Bryce is the best researcher. So we're going to be hearing about Vlad the Impaler today.
Well, and you got the two of you, and both of your sense of humor is hilarious. I love when you both on together. No. I think you make fun of missing bodies, and it's just hilarious. So.
Where the heads. Exactly. Okay, guys. Love you all. Thank you so much. Jessica, it's always lovely to see you. Angels amongst us, 214, Lisa D. It's really Laurie, Deborah, Elaine. Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And we'll see you soon, right? We will see you back very soon, and we'll definitely have Myrna back on again. And guys, if there's anyone else who wants to tell their story, Coon! I love Coon. She's always on Facebook.
Hi to you. Hi, Chantelle.
I love Coon.
Okay, she's done.
Love it.
All right.
Okay. Cheers, guys. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.